sort of abuse he might throw at you. Then he'd have to come round and apologise for 40 minutes in your front room and no doubt drink all your blue nun. Much safer to pull the duvet up, cuddle up to your teddies and wait for colour political wordsmith Jeffrey Archer to talk about politics and books. And unlike our great leader, if you don't like what you see, no need to slag us off behind our backs. Just sign up to Twitter and tell it to our faces. But frankly, I think you might prefer my back. Now, I fancied a word with the Prime Minister, so I thought I'd pop down to the shops for a loaf of bread. After all, it did work for that nice old age pensioner in Rochdale. But the great leader was nowhere to be seen. All three party leaders have been keeping some distance from the people whose votes they want in this campaign. And after Mr Brown's experience with Gillian Duffy yesterday, you can understand why. Clearly, people and politicians just don't mix. But ever helpful, we sent broadcaster Matthew Wright to get down with the common people.
Madam, Gordon Brown or brown bread? Which do you prefer?
Are you sure? You want to live like common people. You want to see what common people see.
Nice of you to say so. This ain't so bad. Getting out of our ivory towers onto the streets, meeting the great British public. They seem all right. Should do it more often. Oh, excuse me. In olden times, journalists would treat politicians with deference. Is there anything you would like to tell the nation, sir? And when they were out on the campaign trail, hacks would listen to everything they said and even applaud. My, how times have changed. I bet Gordon Brown wishes he could turn the clock back. Yesterday, he was on the campaign trail in Rochdale visiting a community project when he bumped into a 66-year-old pensioner who popped out to buy a loaf of bread.
You don't say anything about the immigrants because you're saying that but all these Eastern Europeans what are coming in, where are they flocking from?
A million people come from Europe, but a million people, British people, have gone into Europe. You do know there's a lot of British people staying in Europe as well. Good. It's very nice to see you.
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you.
Smiling, polite, she even promised to vote Labour. How could it possibly go wrong? Well, I've been presenting my show for the last 10 years, dealing with the public every day, answering all sorts of questions. And the one thing I know when you're still wearing this is you don't do what Gordon did next.
What did she say? Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman.
It's funny, isn't it, how the three televised leaders' debates have been the game changer of this election. But trust me, you mess with the public at your peril, as plenty of other politicians have found to their cost in the past. Mrs Thatcher famously handbagged by a Bristol housewife over the sinking of the Belgrano during the Falklands War. Tony Blair got at by the relative of a cancer sufferer in Birmingham. But it was a pensioner that rattled Gordon Brown's cage. I bet he won't forget the name Gillian Duffy in a hurry. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, sure.
Thanks so
What's your name?
It's for my nan. She's your biggest fan.
Oh. There we go, young lady. You're welcome. Presumptuous cow. It's always the nans. Of course, it's not just Gordon Brown's team that's obsessed with meeting real people. That's real people as opposed to unreal people. But it has to be said, he's not the most seasoned of performers. Then again, even those who are adept in front of the camera can come hideously unstuck. Earlier this week, David Cameron, he met the father of a boy with special needs.
But what choice do I have if I have to battle for 2 years?
You shouldn't have to battle.
And you want to say you want to reverse the bias toward including children?
Sir, the whole point is, at the moment, you don't get what you want because the state doesn't respond.
No, that is not the point. The point is there's a bias against the inclusion of children, not for, which is what your manifesto says there is.
I went through it.
No, you didn't. You didn't try and get your child into a mainstream school with respect.
I didn't. Anyway, it was lovely to meet you. Nice to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Sir, I can get you.
I wonder what David Cameron said when he got back into the car. Of course, we'll never know because unlike Gordon, he wasn't wearing a microphone. Can we assume he said something nasty? I mean, maybe, because let's face it, we've all been there. So, are there any tips I can pass on to politicians who are going to meet real people? Well, first, avoid them like the plague, real people that is, because for all you know, they might have it. 2, if you are going to meet real people, show them some respect. They're going to vote for you. And finally, unfair as it may seem, politicians, well, you don't really have a private life. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? What if anyone else wants my autograph?
I want your autograph, Matthew. Matthew Ride, Meeting the People. He doesn't do it a lot, but he obviously enjoyed it. I want to obviously talk about the Gillian Duffy business and the significance. Before I do, let's just look at the policy that is dominating the campaign, the economy. Tonight, was anybody really convincing on the economy? Were they not all really dancing round the head of a pin? None of them telling us what they would really do in power?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you say dancing around the head of a pin, because all this debate about £6 billion...
About £6 billion?
I mean, and it's not even £6 billion, really, because it's only a debate between £6 billion now or £6 billion later, you know, a year later. I do think, you know, what the cloud is just beginning to pass over our sun, because, you know, we're seeing riots in Greece, we're seeing Spain now downgraded in its credit rating, we see the pound going down this afternoon, we see the governor of the Bank of England saying that it's a poison chalice to become Prime Minister in these circumstances. And yet still, a great deal of unreality. Two taxi drivers I met today said, you know, hope your lot get in because things will be better then. I said, they won't be better. Things are going to be much, much worse. And there's kind of no understanding of that at all, it seems to me. Or, sorry, very little understanding of that.
There was no attempt tonight by any of the three, Charles, to really tell it like it is. And when people like me interview the politicians now, and we say, look, what's really going to happen? All we get is endless stuff about back office functions and efficiencies.
Yeah.
I mean, if this could be done by back office functions being cut, we must have the biggest back office in the world. It must stretch from here to John O'Groats.
I think you're right, and so I'll spare you the party, the party.
It's too late.
Talk on this, because we could all recite each other's scripts, and all three of them tonight were playing a safety game. None of them wanted to debate. I thought the first 20 minutes of tonight's debate, thought there is an argument brewing here, waiting to happen. Is it going to happen? It didn't actually happen.
It didn't.
It didn't, because nobody wanted to take the risk of pushing the boat out and being the first to, you know, put their head above the parapet, as it were. So I think that's the truth. The irony is, whatever the outcome of this election, in a week's time, almost exactly, we'll be sitting saying, well, what is this new House of Commons, and whatever government emerges, what the hell is it going to do about the economic situation? Unlike Michael, I'm not so sure people are quite so sanguine. I do think what's happened is, it used to be Scotland was, and still is, apart from Northern Ireland, way out in the lead in terms of the preponderance of the public sector. But under Mr Brown, the public sector has expanded south of the border as well. There's a lot of people, I'm not knocking it, but it's just an objective observation, with a strong vested interest in wanting not to see the awful truth confronted.
And that includes most of the north of England and Wales.
Indeed.
And parts of the Midlands too.
Indeed.
Diane, this was a remarkable thing we learned tonight, that the governor of the Bank of England told this American economist a month ago, it wasn't last week, as the Economist said, it was the beginning of March, that whoever wins this election, because of all the tough things they have to do, will be out of power for a generation.
That was quite illuminating. And in some ways, one of the moments of the week, although it wasn't as exciting as Mrs Duffy, was the IFS, the Institute of Fiscal Studies, making it clear and completely objectively that no party is telling you how they're going to fix the deficit.
All right, the story of the week, and I think probably still bigger than the debates tonight, is Mrs Duffy. How damaging was it?
I think